Hey there, folks. Welcome to another edition of Stranger in a Southern Land. I, of course, am your host, Jake Manning. Today in the program, we have my improv teacher from the Charlotte Comedy Theater, Keli. Keli, who's just been a wonderful and positive influence upon my life ever since I met her. And I think everybody at the Charlotte Comedy Theater would say the same. You know, Keli's got an impressive resume in improv. She was doing improv in Chicago in the 90s, when it was going on, when it was happening. And she learned from the master himself, Del Close, you know, the keeper of the flame, the guy that everybody talks about. We've got a lot of really great stories, Del Close stories, that is. But we've got even better stories about how the Charlotte Comedy Theater came to be. So I'm very excited about this one, that's for sure. And normally at this moment in time in the podcast, I let you know about where I'm going to be at this weekend, but kind of laying low this weekend. So I'm going to take this opportunity to talk more about the Charlotte Comedy Theater because the biggest weekend of the year is just right around the corner, only 2 weeks away. On June 26th and on June 27th, the playoffs are back. We talk a little bit about it in the podcast, so I don't want to spoil it too much. I just want to reiterate, it's the biggest weekend of the year for the Charlotte Comedy Theater. 8 o'clock shows on both days with a 10 o'clock show on June 27th, Saturday night. That's when the finals are happening for this crazy thing. So make sure you come out to it. Tickets are only $10. Even on the biggest weekend of the year, they don't raise their ticket prices. It's insane. So make sure you reserve your seats today at the charlottecomedytheater.com. All right, without further ado, let me give you some information where you can follow me on social media. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at ManScoutManning or on Instagram at ManScoutManning. If you have any questions about the podcast, make sure you email me at jake@sslshow.com. Or if you want to book me for an upcoming wrestling event, make sure you email me at manscoutmanning@yahoo.com. So anyways, without further ado, let's jump right into this podcast with Keli from the Charlotte Comedy Theater. We're here right now. You know, Keli, thank you for joining me in the home studio. You're the third person to join me in the home studio, so thank you for stopping by.
Thanks for having me. I've gone through all your drawers. Very interesting.
Yes, I know, right? Especially since I have an African-American girlfriend, so that you probably got all kinds of different things. You probably didn't know that until now.
No,
so,
I did not know that.
So there you go. Now that explains the leopard print underwear.
That did not explain it. That might have just been you.
That might have just been
Usually it's women over 40 go into leopard print.
Yeah.
Which is my people. And I'm like, I'm not doing that.
No.
Have you noticed that it turns into rayon and then like animal prints as soon as women go over 40? And then like the big clutch handbags that are shiny. I was like, no.
No, I didn't fall for that phase.
Oh, yeah. No, not having it.
Yeah, see, it's always black women with me is the leopard print stuff. That's how I know that.
Well, they can pull it off.
Oh, yeah. She pulls off real well.
Women over 40 just gave up. They're like, well, hell, I'm going to wear leopard print now.
Lycra, everything, zebra print, all that.
Yeah.
But anyways, Keli, you were my improv instructor, but I don't know that much about you, but you were extremely interesting and intriguing. And definitely when I first started this project, you were definitely one of those people I wanted to have on here.
Cool.
So I'm very glad that we're getting to sit down and talk about your journey through life and through improv and everything else. So let's kind of start at the beginning. What was it like growing up?
Well, I grew up kind of like when people say, where are you from because of my accent or whatever, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Mm-hmm. My mom and stepdad and siblings, we lived in Michigan and Chicago, but my father was down here in South Carolina in TK. Mm-hmm. So I went back and forth all the time. So, which always gave me like, I do of course have like the more Chicago accent, but I still say y'all, you know.
It happens. It sneaks up on you. It creeps into you.
Yeah.
I'm from Iowa and it snuck into my vocabulary.
Yeah. So I have like a very mixed vocabulary. But it was a very like awkward childhood. Like everybody has an awkward childhood, but you know, my mom was, it was more, the best way to say it without it, you know, being too heartfelt or tragic, but I was raised in an alcoholic home, a lot of violence, you know, a lot of craziness going on. That was the northern part. Now, my dad down here everything was cool and kind and wonderful. So I had these two completely different experiences back and forth. So I've kind of, it helped me be chameleon a lot. Like I had to adapt to this environment, and then I had to adapt to this environment. So my dad here was a Republican and a golfer, and then I had the raging drunks, that didn't take care of anything, and I ended up taking care of the kids, in my where I spent most of my time. So I had a very just bizarre childhood, really. It was, but it made me adaptive. It made me, strong. There are a lot of great things about it. So I'm not necessarily a victim of it, but it is part of, I think, that edginess of me, or that rough cut part where you can see that part of me. Even though I'm all spiritual and sweet, I can still be just, as aggressive, and kind of a lot of that will come out, kind of the awkwardness of that pent up emotion of childhood. You'll just see come out of me, especially in certain characters, because it's a great way to release those, fears and angers and anxiety and all those things. I can release it through a character, and I don't own it anymore. So it was great fodder for improvisation.
Obviously. Probably good at scene initiations. You already know how to start, just come in a room and cause mayhem.
Kicking a door.
like how can we interject mayhem? Oh, I know.
Wait, I was raised on mayhem. Come on.
But anyways, how did the bug of performing hit you? Like, when did you decide that was it just, where does that come along for you?
It was really weird. When I was younger, I would, like if my aunts and uncles came into town, where I was always safe. I wasn't going to get abused when my aunts and uncles were in town. For some reason, I would just automatically like put on a show. I'd dress up like Dolly Parton and come down the stairs singing or whatever, like out of nowhere. And it was almost, again, like maybe a nervousness, or in school, I just bust out and do like bizarre things, like in junior high, like open the desk and start acting like characters were in my desk and play out these little scenes. So then they were like, "Oh, you're a class clown." No, I was a nervous wreck, is what I was.
So
and
you're just looking for attention,
or just like I was falling apart, I think, and it came out in these bizarre ways, and somehow people laughed at it and responded, and then it was more. I was getting positive feedback somewhere, so instead of it just being a nervous thing, I would do a little bit more and a little bit more, and that kind of stopped through like high school, college. I went in the military. And that kind of just faded away. It was never a need to perform, but it was a need to be accepted, to be validated. And I acted out for that. And I never thought about going into the arts or anything like that. I was a corporate trainer, actually here for Cigna. And when I moved to Chicago, I was like, well, around my friends, I was funny. But I just was also very unsure of myself, low self-esteem. So when I started doing training, I'd be very excited about what I was training. I'd know my subject matter. And then as soon as I knew I had everybody's attention, I'd start to sweat and kind of fall apart and, get tongue twisted and freak out. So when I moved to Chicago and got a training job there, I was like, well, I'm in the land of improv. I'm going to take improv, and that will help me be a better communicator, give me more confidence. So I really did it for my career with no intention of ever performing or anything. But once I started doing it, it was so amazing. It was the first thing I ever felt like home. It was the first place and around the first people that I ever felt like, this is where I belong. These are my people, So then it just became an obsession at that point. It was the one thing that I grabbed onto, that like, this is what I do. This is who I was born to be. So I kind of lucked into it in a sense. And especially at the time I did in Chicago in the 90s was amazing. And the best
that
town
was
ever.
the time.
Oh, yeah. It was like the Woodstock of improv, like the best of the best, that are still doing it and still kicking and still, driving comedy today. So I was very lucky. It just kind of all happened. It's one of those things like follow your heart, follow what you feel you need to do in that moment. And that just led me to where we're supposed to be. And I was like 27 by the time I started. Most of the people before me started way younger. So in the improv community in Chicago, I was kind of old coming in. I was the only person that had a kid. My daughter was 7 at the time. No, she was actually 5, 6 when I started, but yeah. So I did it to be a better trainer. And then and I continued training and having my day job, and it did make me a much better trainer, but it was not my goal ever to be a performer at that point. So it happened.
Well, let's take a half step back before we jump in the improv thing, because this is something that I've always wanted to ask you, but since we're now the time for me to ask you questions. You said you're in the military. Like, how did that, knowing the person that sits in front of me now, for you to say that you were in any type of armed services boggles my mind. Like, there has to be a story how that happened.
Well, it boggled the mind of everybody when I said I was going to the military too. I was, kind of a rogue, smart ass, just kind of, I was kind of a bad girl. So when I was, not only was I going in the Army, I was going to be an MP, and everybody's like, what?
Yeah.
I think it came from a need to have structure. Because of my family being so chaotic when I was younger. Like, there was no structure. If anybody provided structure, it was me as a kid. So when I started college, again, there was no structure. And me and my friends partied all the time. I remember going on a binge to the beach for 3 weeks or 3 days. And it was during exam week. Like, I knew I had no internal mechanism for self-control, for whatever it was that I was lacking. And for some reason, it spoke to me to like, out of nowhere, it's like, I'm going in the military. Besides, I also had, a practical term is I wanted to go to school for something else. My dad says, I'm paying for it. You're going to go to school here. And this is what you're going to do. And I'm like, well, I'll go and I'll make money I'll get my GI Bill or whatever. And I'll pay and go to whatever school I want to. And I'll be whatever I want to be.
Yeah.
And I remember being like up all night partying and literally sitting in the parking lot at McDonald's at like 6 a.m. or 5:30 in the morning, waiting for them to like make the biscuits and wake up. And I just go, this is not who I want to be. This is not, I'm going to die. Like this is not where the path I want to go down. And then that day I went, took a shower, and I did get my biscuit. I went and took a shower, and I went and signed up for the military. It was one of those things, just like when I moved to Chicago and did improv, like it was one of these like things in my chest, I mean, in your heart. There's like, you have to do something. And so I followed that, and I ended up in upstate New York and in Korea, and I actually really enjoyed the military, especially like basic training. People are crying and missing home and freaking out. This is so hard, and they're yelling at me. I'm like,
yeah.
My stepdad was way worse than these drill sergeants. These guys can't actually hit me, So I did okay, but I actually enjoyed it. I enjoyed the structure. I enjoyed that. Once you're in there, it's a game. You learn how to play it. So I did pretty well, and I enjoyed it. And I probably would have stayed in, but I got pregnant with my daughter when I was in Korea. And her father was also a U.S. soldier, and they didn't offer you, back then, this is in 87, they didn't offer you anything but get out.
I was going to say, because it's a very different time then, and it's, there's a different...
Very few females.
Yeah.
Very few. And they really did not make it easy for you, nor did they really like you being there, but they had to be cool with it. So it was either, like as soon as they told me, I thought I had the flu. They go, you're pregnant. We'll have you back in 8 weeks for termination. I'm like, hey, don't play my life for me. I didn't even know this was a possibility. I didn't know what was going on. Let me figure this out.
Yeah.
So I came back home. Yeah.
It's funny because your story sounds very similar to my story of almost joining the military, because I was this close, and I had that same situation. Like, I think this is what I have to do.
Yeah.
And I had a situation where I had just dropped out of college for a year to get a real job, so my sisters could go to college.
Oh.
So I made that sacrifice for myself, but it wasn't going well for me.
Maybe I sacrificed a little bit too much, like my integrity.
Yeah, I was like, I can't make ends meet here. And then I just started wrestling, and I was like, well, if I go in the military, then I'll have all this money, and then I could go back to college, and then I'd have this money and be a wrestler, and I had it all planned out, and I was actually going to sign up and to break my mother's heart too.
I bet.
I was going to ship out like around Christmas time, because I heard you got extra money for that. So I was like, because I was so like, when you're poor, you're like, oh, anything for more money, to do, please, okay,
take me at Christmas,
take a toe off, sure, extra money, no problem. And I was gonna do that, but I let it slip on a conversation with my mother, and she talked me out of it. But I had that same situation, because I, much like you, probably like the fact of kind of being a little rebellious, but there's that sense of structure that you can't, that you need sometimes.
I do. I absolutely do. I need just enough. Because I like having the structure so I can figure out how to beat it. Again, like it's a game. It's like, oh, these are the rules. All right.
Like when you say playing the game, like I like that too. It's like, I just like knowing the rules of the game so I could be the person over here and don't have to follow the rules.
Yeah. I'll go within the outline of that, but then I'm going to go further for sure. Like, but if there are no rules, it's just, it's kind of boring. And like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't, what am I supposed to be rebelling against here? Yeah. Especially when it's like me now that I run my own business, everything was like, oh, no, this is terrible.
Yeah. I got nobody to rebel against myself.
I'm rebelling against myself, and this is horrible.
And the only way you can do that is just sit on the couch and do nothing. But then that's just even more.
Yeah, and then I feel guilty. I'm like, oh, this is a terrible, terrible cycle here. I'm only responsible for one person, and this person knows how I think. This person knows my game. Oh. So, yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I think I just, both times were like also very like out of the box things for me, but it was just such a push, such a, like, if I don't do this, I'm going to die. And not maybe like physically, but spiritually. Like I knew whoever I really was getting lost. Mm-hmm. Like I was, married, had a great job, had a new home, had a new car when I moved to Chicago. And I was like, I'm giving it all up, everything but my daughter. I was like, I'm walking away from all this. For some reason, I have to go to Chicago. Mm-hmm. And that not knowing it was going to be improv. I didn't even take it for the first year I was there. I just had to go there. And trying to explain to my dad, who it broke his heart, and my friends who were like, what is wrong with you? I said, I don't know, but I have to do this. Like, I feel like my life depends on it. Mm-hmm. And it was just such a strong, strong feeling. And there was no rationale to it. But that's also, when you have some sort of a divine path or something you're supposed to be doing, doors are going to close. Your heart, even though everything looked good on the outside of how I was living my life, and I had everything I could want or need, but like inside, everything was wrong. Everything just felt wrong and fake and unsubstantial. Mm-hmm. And I was struggling. Like I went to counseling, like, what's wrong with me? I have everything that's right. I did everything the right way. Everything is, I got a great job. I get paid way more than I deserve. I love what I do, everything. And just still at the same time, just falling apart, going, this can't be all there is. Mm-hmm. And so when I get that thing, it's like, do this. This is what you need to do, no matter how big of a deal it was. So I drove a 28-foot truck through a snowstorm in the middle of the night to Chicago with no place to park it, mm-hmm. and started a whole new life. But because of that, we're sitting here today, or, the shows are going on here. 20 years later, I'd look at if I hadn't done that, even the people that I've met through our theater here who've gotten married or become great friends or done shows or all these different things that they've done together. It's like none of that would have happened if I had given up, if I just let that part of me die, mm-hmm. And just do the right thing. If I wasn't rebellious, I would have just stayed in my little life, the little cardboard life that everybody says you should have. But it didn't work for me. It was just, to me, the most horrendous thing ever is to have everything seem pretty perfect and on the inside be like, oh my God, this is horrible.
Yeah, because I would, like, everybody that ever had those great moments, I'm saying, there was that moment where like I packed up everything and I just did this on a chance. Like, and it seems like it always works out for somebody, whether it works out, big, or they just work out and like, oh no, I have a decent life. You don't have to be the richest person on the planet, or the most famous person on the planet from that risk to work out. Like sometimes you're like, oh, I have a comfortable living. I just took a chance on this, not asking what I was going to get paid for this job, or not asking what I was going to get out of this opportunity. I just took up on this opportunity.
Well, part of it is that thing, like we work on in improv, is being in the moment, is in that moment knowing this is a desire, a need, a great need, and not knowing what the end result would be. Like in every way possible, it seems stupid. Me and my own with a 5-year-old in a huge city. I took a huge pay cut. I didn't know my way around the city. I mean, I lived there as a kid. Mm-hmm. So everything about it seemed ridiculous. And I remember, that last moment when I came up, like 94, and I'm looking at the city right in front of me, and I was just like, oh my God, what have I done? And it was terrifying, this giant city teeming with people. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, there was an excitement of like jumping off a cliff and knowing that I was going to land okay. Mm-hmm. It was like spreading your wings and not knowing how bad the fall was going to be, or how long, or whatever. There was that free fall moment when I looked at the city. I was like, I'm falling, Yeah. But those are the moments where that define you. And maybe it isn't, like you said, it's not whether you'll make a lot of money or meet the right person or the things that we think are important. Mm-hmm. It is finding who you are, which is most important, which will get you in the career that you want and the right person. Yeah. So something about who I authentically was that to get out of the life I was in. Mm-hmm. Not even at that point having the language or dialogue that I do now to say that's what it was. Mm-hmm. But then I just knew that everything was wrong no matter how right it looked. Mm-hmm. It just did not feel right. I was like not me in my own body. You look at your life and go, this is all crap. It's nice, fancy crap, but it's crap, you know?
Yeah, you need something with a little substance almost.
Yeah, it just wasn't me. I was like a ghost in my own world that I had created, And that, I think that happens to a lot of people. And there's a fear of like, well, it doesn't mean you have to walk away from your family. Obviously my marriage wasn't great anyway, or I wouldn't have left it. But you don't have to sacrifice everything. You just have to find a way to do what your heart says, because no matter what your mind says about how good your situation is, your heart will betray you if it's not right for you. It will break. It will hurt. And there's that part of you crying inside, just going, get me out of here. And that's what I listened to. So I really didn't have a choice. I wasn't like so brave or anything. I think the pain I was in was greater than my fear. And that's the angels calling. Sorry, I should turn that off.
No, it's quite okay.
Yeah. It was, I was more motivated by my total contempt for pain.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you got into Chicago, and when you just were talking before about improv, you said you already kind of knew about it. Like, how did you discover it, run into it? How did it come into your life right off?
Well, the only thing I really knew about it, and then I was living in the South. I was living here in the Carolinas prior to that move. Is seeing Whose Line Is It Anyway, the original one, which is the British version. So I saw that, I'm like, this is hilarious. They're so fun and they're so fast, But I never associate that with me or my life whatsoever. Like, none of that even existed for me. Because
it's funny how things like that in entertainment, you're just like, people have no idea how you get to that.
Yeah.
Like, and anybody that is in entertainment, they have such crazy stories. Like, I just thought, Lorne Michaels would show up and he would just put me on SNL. It's like, I heard that great joke you said yesterday around the water cooler.
Yeah. Like,
I'll see you in New York,
Yeah, I was quite sure I was going to be famous.
It's like my dumb idea of what wrestling was. I thought to be a wrestler, you had to be like a Division I football player, and Jim Ross shows up at your house, watches you do bench press a couple of times, then he makes you WWF champion. That's what I thought happened.
Then you get the belt.
Exactly. That's what I thought.
Never.
It's apparently there's actually ways in learning you have to do.
There's a lot of hard work,
and there's
a lot
steps
of sacrifice
in between. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and it is. You knew early, obviously, that's what you want to do. I never knew what I wanted to do or where I belonged. I just, I had to earn a living. I had a child when I was 21, so my decisions were always met by need. Need. You need a job. You need a home. You need an after school program. You need medical insurance. You need these things. So for me, it was very, very different to go into a place of this makes my soul sing. So when I first started taking it, then it was, I barely, made enough money to get by. So I even waited tables at IO, and I would be sitting there waiting tables, and then my team came up and I'd take my thing off and I'd go jump on stage and play for 30 minutes, put it back on and go get another round of drinks, So, I did, clean bathrooms, whatever, I could to pay for this in addition to working 40 hours and taking care of kid. So I was always busy. Like the 8 years I was there, I averaged 4 hours of sleep. Mm-hmm. But part of it was that I love to hang out with everybody too. So
yeah, exactly. But that's part of it too. That's really, really is part of it. Is that right chemistry with people? Yeah, the community. On and off stage. Yeah, for sure. Now, as far as your classes, who was your first teacher? Like, how did that process start?
Trying to think. Well, Sharna Halpern was the first at IO, which was then the Improv Olympic. The first great teacher I had. Mm-hmm. And there's so many wonderful people there, like Miles Stroth. And then we also, once you've been there for a while, then you get on a team. And, I could tell the people I took that actually were my class instructors, but there are also people that coached. Like Amy Poehler was one of my coaches. The one that I've learned so much from is Susan Messing. And she was at the Annoyance at the time, but also did and I didn't really know her well, but I heard there was this little thing for women while I was studying at IO, hey, this great improvisers for $5. She does class just for women on Monday nights, Basement of the Annoyance. And so I started going over there. I'm like, oh my God, this is breathtaking. She gets to the meat of it. Mm-hmm. And then when we needed a coach again for my improv team, we asked Susan to coach us. So she coached us for several years. And then, McNapier, Joe Bill, so many people that I learned from that were either directly my one of our team coaches or somebody I took a class with, but a lot of them were people that I played with or that were ahead of me, like Stephanie Weir, Michelle Rico, Bob Dassey. I mean, there's so many people that I watched that were, years ahead of me, but they were still just performers at that time that you just watch them and your jaw dropped. You're like, holy crap. You are amazing. Yeah. And you could see it, you could, in Chicago, you could see long form improv every night. So the more you were there, the more you saw, the more you learned. And I learned from so many people, even just by watching, that were just phenomenal. And I was lucky to come up with so many brilliant people that we were all in classes together, and we learned from each other, and continued to play with each other for years and years and years. And as we grew, we learned, and somebody would pick up something and like, oh my God, that's amazing. And you'd pick it up from them, and you'd bounce back and forth. I just learned from that entire, 90s community of improvisers.
Yeah.
Really, there was so much and so many just amazing, amazing teachers there. And just to have the time in, just to be able to be there and absorb it all the time. And it was like, I remember at one point there was like one night that I would be home. That was actually my night where I wasn't either playing or rehearsing or in a class or coaching, or doing 2-3 shows. That it took over my life. It was definitely obsession at that point. But it was the one thing I found that felt really, really good. So I wasn't letting it go. Not for anything.
Yeah. And of course, the big name in improv is Del Close.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any interaction or take any class or what
Oh, yeah.
was please.
You wanna know?
He fascinates me so much.
Okay, great, Del Close.
Please, any stories about him? Because he's just, if every story I've ever heard about him is just fascinating.
He, to me, hilarious. I was with him because at a certain point I was working there, and it was a coach there. So I got to stay in Dell's class as much as I wanted to. So usually you get like to a certain level. At that time was only like level 4. Now they have God knows how many levels. And you took Dell. Well, I took Dell, and then I kept studying with him. And my thing was, I was told he was a legend. So I refused to be intimidated by anybody. So when he was sitting there like, big grumpy Dell, I went and sat right next to him. And I'm like, I'm just not going to be scared of this man. And he was just scary man. Came from the Beat generation. He'd pull his sleeves up and show you his track marks from when he was an addict.
He broke, like cold turkey. He stopped terribly, is what I heard. Like, that's insane.
But he also was not supposed to be drinking. So everybody had to kind of monitor that, because we still had classes in the bar. So he drank whatever the non-alcoholic beer was. Mm-hmm. He wasn't supposed to be smoking. And luckily I smoked at the time Virginia Slim Ultralight Menthol. So he'd be like, hey, give me a smoke. And he's like, not that. And I was like, dude, you're not even supposed to be smoking.
Yeah.
Like, this is why. He was great at telling stories that were great life lessons. Do I think he was a good improv teacher? No. He was gruff. He was mean. If he knew your name, you were pretty bad. But if he didn't, you're pretty good. I was the girl with the kid. Or, but I would also see him like be on stage. And I've at this point when I'm with him, in his classes for this long period of time, I'm performing with these people. We're performing all the time. He rarely ever came to shows. Mm-hmm. So I know who's good. And I'd be on stage with somebody who's like far brilliant compared to me. Like, I know where I stand. Yeah. And he'd be like, oh, you should be more like her. And like, what I did was shit. And I know that what the other guy did was great. So it's like, you don't know what you're talking about. But I think I did have like probably one of my most magic moments ever, because I was so intimidated by Dell, and everybody was. We were just there, and somehow there was an opening about car and something that was a cars, and I went out with a chair and acted like I was in a car, and I thought everybody was going to come out and join me, and everybody left me there. And this was like my first class ever with Dell, and all my friends, and because now we've been through several levels together, and I know them, and we play together. It's like, you assholes. So they left me out there, and I got into this weird space where I was driving the car, and in my head, I was actually coming to the theater. And the theater there was right across from Wrigley Field. So sometimes you be coming to class, there's a game, this place just blows up. There's people drumming, and there's traffic, and there's cops, and there's, 25,000 people trying to get into the Cubs game. But there's also certain homeless people you saw all the time, and there was this one I called Duckman that I would see. And in this moment, I started having this conversation with this man that actually existed that was literally right outside the building. And I had this conversation back and forth, but it was a one-sided conversation. I just talked to him. And then finally I ended it, and I was like, well, I got to go. I got to go to class. And then I keep going, and I walk into class, and then the scene ends. And I was so gone, when people say you're in the zone or whatever, like I saw everything. I smelled everything. Like I heard the horns. I heard the people cheering. I smelled the popcorn. It was just such an amazing moment to be in a time that you weren't in. And I remember just like looking up and going, oh God, he's going to yell at me. And he did like grumbly. He was like, well, I said you can't do a scene by yourself. or with somebody who's not on stage with you. You're giving that, to somewhere else. He's like, but I will stand corrected in this instance. I was like, woo. So from then on, I was the girl with the baby, so it's like, oh, he doesn't know my name. Okay, I'm good.
Why is that? Just because he's like, oh, he's so bad, like he would remember the name, or it's the fact that he took the time to remember a personal detail about it?
I don't know. He was also, he was an awkward kind of curmudgeon-y guy, because he would be like at a Christmas, like this, I had studied with for a long time. And one time, I've gotten in a couple fights with him too, because he was really, really cruel to a girl one time. And then after class was over, I was so mad. I went up to him and I go, people don't learn in fear. I said, you verbally castrated that girl. You're right. She's not good. She's probably never gonna be good. But the fact that she came here and she tried means something. And how dare you take her apart? You have no right to do that. Like, it was brutal, like very brutal. And, the next, and he's like, well, it's what I don't even know what he said, because he talked like that. And so I got livid, and he said something the next class. And she did come back, and I was really proud of her. He said, I've been told by someone that I was way too brutal, and that isn't proper, So, and he could do that. But I remember seeing him at a Christmas party. I was like, Dell! And I opened my arms and I start walking to him. He's sitting on the sofa. The closer I got to him, it was like a slow motion moment that I could see him just like getting more and more horrified the closer I came to give him a hug. Mm-hmm. And like, there was no way he wanted to accept this physical thing whatsoever did he want it. So of course I did it anyway.
Of course, because you're that type of person.
So he's like, oh, the girl with the kid touched me, He's a one-of-a-kind person. And again, I learned so much from him about life. He told this great story one time. He was right for class. He said, I had a dream that I was in space. I was flying in a little Cessna, but I had to keep my feet moving to keep it going. It was almost like foot propelled. And the further I got up, the less I could see the landmarks that told me where I was, like street signs or then billboards or the buildings. And the farther I got, the darker it got, the less I knew where I was or where I was going. All I knew is I had to keep going. I just had to keep going. He goes, that's what life is like. When you're really going, when you're really flying, there are no more landmarks to tell you you're on the right course, that you're on the right path. You just have to keep going. And I thought it was, immensely profound. Another thing he said was, life is every human being is an abyss of contradictions. If you think you know yourself, you're wrong. Mm-hmm. If you're sure you know your friend, you're a liar. Like, you don't know. You'll continually find these contradictions within yourself. So things like that, like really deep spiritual stuff, I thought he was brilliant. And that's why I continued to be around him. Like, he was amazing. But yeah, he was a mean, surly old man. He was, he was interesting. We had an argument. I was at Sharna's one year for Thanksgiving. It was me, Dell, my son. I can't remember who else was there. There was only like 4 or 5 of us. And I said that I no longer got the news or listened to news programs. And he goes, well, how can you improvise? You have to be, know exactly what's going on. And I go, not really. I go, it's the same story. What stories aren't, it's different names, but it's usually the same story. Big guy, screwing over little guy. Mm-hmm. Sometimes little guy comes back, wins, but usually big guy screws little guy. And I can tell by the audience if they're talking about a politician or whatever. It's like, you don't have to know all the stories to know the story. There are only so many human stories. They're repeated over and over again with little slight twinges. Poor, underdog makes it big through all his struggles and triumphs. I mean, there really are so many stories, but they all usually are thematic. So we had this big debate. I listen to NPR now, but I still not I don't watch the poison of the news. I can't do it. It's just like, it's too toxic. Like, I can't do anything about any of this stuff. So at NPR or BBC, I get my news. But yeah, we've had some interesting go-rounds, he and I. But I was actually in LA when he passed, and it was traumatizing, and I couldn't get back. But we didn't know he was going to pass. I mean, it seemed like he was going to, but I wasn't there for that. I was there for his funeral. It was more his memorial at Second City where all the improvisers got together. Mm-hmm. But he was a great influence. He did teach me a lot about a lot of things. Things like don't wear the same sweatshirt for a month. It's weird, But he was still a beautiful soul. There was a warmth in him even through his abruptness. He was brilliant, a brilliant man. Mm-hmm. So, I'm sure a lot of it was over my head at the time, but he's something else.
Yeah. Like I said, everything I've ever heard about him has just been tremendous. It's unbelievable, unique individual in itself.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is somebody who, my understanding, and I didn't ever ask him personally about it, was after his whole psychedelic experiences in the '60s, is realizing that through improvisation, you could get into that group mind without the psychedelics. Like it could be a psychedelic experience. It's a mind expanding experience, which it is. And after 20 years of doing it and watching and learning more about even, energy medicine and everything else, I'm like, this is an energy medicine. This is an mind expanding process. The things that you get out of meditation are the same things you get out of improvisation. Being in the moment, surrendering the self, letting go of ego. All of those things are similar. It's just a different process. It's really hard to get me to sit still for 10, 20 minutes, more or less an hour or a day to meditate. But I can be on stage or rehearse and play for hours on end and still get the same benefits to a degree.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also too, like it's about being authentic. You were just talking about that, and improvisation is about being authentic.
Yeah.
How does it end up being? Because when you talk about improv, the first thing that comes to most people's minds, it's comedy.
Yeah.
But not everything's comedy. How do you think that improv just always seems to end up as comedy in a sense?
Well, because human beings are funny. I mean, the way we function, the way we try and hide our true selves, even that in and of itself, the games we play with ourselves, our self-denial, the games we play in relationships, where we're manipulating and hiding the truth, all of these things are fun. I mean, human beings are everybody's a dork in my book. I'm like, I don't care who you are. When you uncover the masks that we want everybody to have us see and really just hang around people and get to know them and get to know ourselves, we're hilarious. We're neurotic. We're brilliant. We're scary. We're fearful. We're also resilient. Like just that dichotomy, that contradiction of who we are is beautiful and it's funny. And the reason it's funny is because when you act in a way that is natural, that is human, that is real, that is authentic, people are going to laugh because they identify with it, because they hide that fact too, or they are trying to overcome that obstacle too. So a lot of laughter is identification. Of course we make it bigger. It's not just, this is how I struggle with my relationship issues. I'm making it bigger and broader, and I'm way more neurotic on stage than I let myself be in a real life. But you're taking that grain of truth and you're making it bigger, and shining a light on it. And everybody's like, oh my God, that's hilarious. I do the same thing. Or my ex-wife did that. Or, so that identification, that's what makes it funny. That's part of that laugh, is that release of like, oh my God, I get it. That's me. And for the performer, for you to show that part of yourself that you thought you should hide, those pathetic moments, those sad moments, those ones where you scared yourself, or where you're just like an ass. You're like, I can be so mean. And you act that through a character and people laugh at it. It's also a form of acceptance. So they are seeing themselves in you. And when you see that these other people see themselves in you, you start accepting that part is not being so bad. It's like, oh, everybody gets this. We all kind of have those things within us. There is this commonality. It's not just me. So it's almost like a way of self-forgiveness and self-understanding as well, to say, oh, this is all of us. It's not just, I don't have to hide that. We're all a little flawed and broken and shattered, We're all a little dark sometimes. We're all a little dirty sometimes, So it's very healing. You let it out and you don't own it anymore. You don't have to hide it anymore. You're like, oh, well, there we go. Yeah. I gave it to you guys. You laughed at it. Now I don't have to hold that and hide it away anymore. It's not mine. It's ours. We all have this, Yeah. Like a bad disease.
Yeah. And it's almost like, I heard one time, I think it was Chris Rock that said it. It's like, if you just say the truth, people will laugh. And it's just weird how it just works out that way.
It is. Well, the thing is truth in comedy, and that's one of the main premises of improvisation and comedy in general is the truth is hilarious. Our true stories are way more amazing than any fictitious ones. People's true life stories, as you know from interviewing people, like there's a lot of weird things that go on.
Yeah.
And that journey, and to be able to share that. And that's why it's so funny, is because it is that identification, it is that understanding that, we're not alone in this. I was talking earlier about having everything seem so right and feeling miserable and thinking it was wrong and it wasn't me. So many people can identify with that. There's probably not a person who at one point in their life, adult life, once they're adults, go, I totally know what you're talking about. I could burn all this down. As long as everybody was safe, I'm done. I want to start over, redo, what can I do? So yeah, it does lead to comedy because it's really just identification. It is a sharing of who we are. That's why storytelling is so brilliant. And, because we like to know that really, really deep inside, we're all one. We're all similar. We're not. And I think that takes the loneliness out of our existence too, to know that I'm not the only one that gave up my whole life, or everything I thought was important that I worked so hard for and just like, I don't like this. I gotta go, And for someone else to maybe be in that place and go, this person did it and they're fine and they survived maybe it's time for me to get out of my, downward spiral of self-loathing of this situation and myself and everything else and move forward. So part of it's, we're not all so different. That's why we're funny, because that's why when you hang out with your friends, it's kind of things you say other people may not get. It's an inside joke. So much of if we get really real and real human, it's an inside joke to all of us. We all know what it's like to be human. We know what it's like to suffer and to cry. We know what it's like to be, vigilant. We know what it's like to be neurotic. We know what it's like to overcome obstacles. We know what it's like to be mad when we're not supposed to be mad and to have to hide it, So all the things that we do on stage, in being as real as possible, that's why it's great. If I do a crazy scene, it's like, oh, we're two monkeys in outer space. It may be ridiculous, kind of funny, but it's cutesy funny or whatever, but it's not real. And that's why it's not real funny. Things that touch your soul, that you've lived, you've experienced, you understand, that's the real stuff. That's the real laughter. That comes from deep inside. Not like, oh, monkeys are funny, but oh my gosh, I too have felt that kind of despair and wanted to hit a child, but I never would. But that child's obnoxious,
So because the space monkeys will only get a laugh for 30 seconds, but that long conversation about you're my mom and there's some crazy situation that's set up this way.
Yeah, or like what I say is we play real emotions, in absurd situations sometimes, but a lot of it is just reacting the way you would. I mean, we have all met, like in the situation I gave, we've all met kids that you want to like. They're like your friends or your family's kids, and you're just like, God, that kid. I don't like that kid, But now we can say that on stage. It's like, oh, I hate your horrible children. Don't bring them over here, and people are going to laugh because they couldn't say that in real life. But in my scene, I can say it and have the person be shocked and dismayed and then go on about all the weird things that their kids did at my house and why I don't like them. And we can have that conversation in an improv scene, which in actuality, most people won't because we're too polite. We don't want to cause any problems. But, in improv, we cause problems. They're fun, So even in that's the reality of it. It's like, now, maybe a kid that I've been around that I didn't really like didn't necessarily set my house on fire, which might be my improvised scene, but everybody can identify with like wanting to like someone's kids and not being able to, or any of those things. They're just common human experiences. We're not all that different,
Absolutely. Now, from Chicago, how do we end up with the Charlotte Comedy Theater? There may be a lot of steps in between, but
not really.
Okay. Or if it's that direct of a route, how does that direct of a route?
Same thing. I got to another place where like I was doing shows constantly. I was wearing myself out. I always was performing in bars. So after the show, I was drinking. And again, like going, there's always another show. Like there's or somebody like, hey, you want to come do this show with us? Like, yes. And then I started working with some musicians and like, we're going to improvise music and I'm going to improvise lyrics. We're going to do an improvised band. Like every show we have will be improvised. And still I want to do it. It's a great idea. And I just, at some point was like, I am so not present with my own daughter. Like I'm not here. And I could see it taking a toll on her. And I was like, I can be funny anywhere. If I can't be there for my own family, then what's the point? So it was also like, it's time to go. There was this thing like, it's really
so there's
time.
there's no career aspirations. It was just, I'm doing this.
If anything, I walked away from a career. I mean, I was playing with the best people on the best stages, but also my improvisation has started to like not be as good either because I don't know if you do nothing but improv, because improv imitates life, art imitates life. If you're doing nothing but improv after a while and you're not living your life, you don't really have a whole lot to improvise about. And it just was saying like time to go there. It was time to leave. And there was, my father passed the first year that I was doing improv. And so going home, my home wasn't there anymore, actually. My father was gone. Everything that was locked in South Carolina was no longer there except for my friends, dear friends. And I just like, it's time to go. Like, I just knew that it was time to be more of a family person than I had been. And I was like, well, I can do improv anywhere, whatever. And then I came to Charlotte because, Fort Mill's right across the border. And there was nobody doing improv. There was The Perch doing sketch comedy, which is now Robot Johnson. And they were kind enough to let me use their space. And it's like, well, if I can just get enough people that know how to improvise or just train them Chicago style, then I can just put together an ensemble. We'll just play so I don't lose my mind because I have to do this. It's like if somebody go through AA and you don't continue to go to meetings, for me to be a healthy person, I've got to improvise every so often. So I put out a $28 ad for people who had an improv experience, and some had different things from different places. So I started teaching them kind of more in line with, the hardcore Chicago improv style. And then there were more people wanting to do it. So we started putting up shows, and then it was because there was a need that I kept doing it. It's like, okay. And I even learned more and more and became way better improviser than I ever was, even in Chicago, by teaching. Because as a teacher, you learn so much. You're like, wow, I can't believe I just said that. That is so true. Oh my God. Because my focus is not on me. It's on somebody else and trying to help them and get them there. And you just say these profound things. You're like, where did that come from? That is exactly it. I wish I had told myself that 5 years ago or whatever, that you learn so much more. So I just kept teaching. And then we kept doing shows. And it just because it was so much fun and people enjoyed it. And finally, like 2 years in, I decided to make it a real business and make it the Charlotte Comedy Theater and get incorporated and everything else. And we were all over Plaza Midwood, NODA. We bounced from different places.
Yeah, like what type of spaces did you occupy?
First was with where the Perch originally was. We were in the Grad. Usually what we did, and like now, is we would find a bar and we could use the back room that would be separate. So you're not trying to, like, people playing pool. You're not trying to do improv ever in an open space where people are just coming in, where we could charge at the door and they would know this is what they're coming to and this is what they're going to experience. So anybody had a back room that they weren't using, then we're like, hey, can we turn this into our space? And a couple of them, I put a lot of money into, like, literally redoing it and putting a stage up and backstage and everything. However, some of these places were ones that weren't managed very well, so things would happen. They'd get shut down. Yep. And then all of a sudden we'd come to teach a class and nobody's there. The door's locked. There's a fire marshal notice on there. So that happened to us several times. We even ended up having to be at a coffee shop at one time. So we'd be doing shows. We'd be like grinding coffee over on the side. The air conditioning's leaking on us. Preview down in NODA, we were there, and that place got kind of crazy. To where they would have like really crazy parties after us. So like the next day we were sweeping up the toilets that were overflowed and finding little cocaine straws and stuff. We're like, what goes on here after dark? After we do our shows, we even had to tend our own bar. And then finally when that started going down, I had talked to some people over at the North Carolina Music Factory like a year before, and it wasn't like the right time or whatever. So we came over to Willie's. Oh, we went over to Comedy Zone first and did Sundays. Sunday's a hard pull for comedy.
Yes.
So during that, I said, I need my Fridays and Saturdays back, especially for my performers. They work so hard. I mean, these guys do shows every single weekend. We've been in business for 14 years. Even with things closing down, we have maybe missed one weekend.
Oh, wow.
Besides, like now if we have a concert.
Yeah.
But rarely have we ever missed a weekend in all 14 years. And our players, why they're so good is they get so much stage time. They're not competing with a lot of other people. We only have so many people, and that stage time is everything. I can only teach so much. There's a point you have to experience, and you have to do it. And then go, oh, that worked or that didn't, and it has to be live. Just like you guys. You can train all you want, but live, in the moment, you're going to have to fall on your skills and make those decisions at that moment. Like, what do I do now? So it has to be live. So these guys work so hard, and to have them not have a home, like, to me, that's my biggest job, is to hold the space for people to learn and make sure everybody has a cool home to play in. Just make sure that goes off. So everybody gets to be there to learn because they want to learn, and people get to play because they want to play. That's my biggest job, because also I do team building for corporate workshops now, and I use improv. So I incorporated those two. And one of the things I tell people is, like, as a manager, your biggest job is to get obstacles out of the way for your people. Not to create bureaucracy and more obstacles. Let them do their job, get them what they need, and get out of the way. Because people like to do their jobs. Usually, they want to feel good about what they do. So my job, if I put that on myself, it's like, what is really my job? To keep people inspired, to give them a space to play in and to learn, and to keep that moving forward. As long as I keep that moving forward, that's all I need to do. I don't want to get huge. I never wanted to be famous. I just want to create, and have a place for people to learn and create. That's it. And I have that, and I'm so grateful. And as long as I can keep that going and people still have a place to play and to learn, I've done my job, which is good, because I don't have like these high goals of myself. Like, I should be making this $1 million business. A lot of people come and like, gosh, you should be making way more money doing this. You should have your own space. I'm like, I'm good. Like, I don't want all that headache. This is good and this is fun.
Yeah, because you're able to maintain something for quite some time, because there's that business side of it that now you have to worry about.
Oh, yeah.
As opposed to just being a performer.
Oh, yeah.
And you almost have to have more passion for it, because you have to deal with all this other headache over here. You could play all you want and do all you want, and yes, I'm a performer in this, and have that towards it, but to deal with the headache of it.
Yeah, the other 30 hours.
Yeah, that don't really amount to anything or makes you that better of a performer, but just to give you the right to perform.
Yeah.
You almost have to have more passion to do it.
Yeah. Or really get into I've spent most of my life making money for other people and managing things, and been a project manager and an office manager and a manager, that I know that is not what I really want to do,
Yeah.
So if and I barely get by, but I can barely get by and do what I love. I'll barely get by every day of the week. I don't care. I'll eat ramen. Fine. But yeah, that part of it, because at one point we had a space on Hawthorne. We rented out. I got SBA loans and turned it into a theater from it used to be a disc golf place, and turned it into a theater. And then we're like, okay, we got our licensing and all this stuff. And it's like, now let's see if we can get, an alcohol license, because that's really good. That's what makes you your money.
Yeah. That's
we make $10 per seat. We always have 14 years. We've never increased our price because I want it to be affordable.
Yeah.
And then because we were within 1,000 feet of a church that wasn't even operating, we couldn't get a license. Well, our idea of what we could afford, or mine, I guess I can say ours, like the basically my name, it means I just have the bills in my name. Basically, I own the theater. All the bills are in my name. That's all it means. I'm responsible.
Yeah.
And we couldn't do it. So finally we had to pull out of there and went somewhere else. But I'm still paying on those loans.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. I am still to this day paying on those loans.
Oh.
So I learned, one of the things I was like, stay under the radar, do it. I mean, I'm legal. I have all my permitting and licensing, but what is a win-win situation? Like us being where we are, is if you go with somebody, like when they don't have a lot of people in there, I can bring, even if it's 10, 20, 50 people that are going to eat and drink there during their slow time, they get that.
Yeah, they're happy. Like
they're
what
happy.
Well is happy that you're bringing
Yeah.
because the people that are showing up there might not necessarily be people that would normally show up to that location.
Right.
At
And
least during that time,
And that's always the thing is, 8 o'clock shows, it's usually pretty dead time. It's either right after the dinner hour, right before the party hour. Mm-hmm. So it brings people in. We have a place to play. It's just a win-win situation. We help each other out, and it's wonderful. And I love the people there. They become family to us too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's great. There are people I never would have met had we not been over there, and they've been very gracious. We've been there like 2.5 years. The longest we've ever stayed anywhere. Hallelujah.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's good.
And not by anything we did. Again, every venue just, I was like, man, I picked shady people. So to have my business with, or it was people, I guess, that really needed us to be there.
Yeah.
But really doesn't need us to be there.
Yeah.
It's an
They're happy you're
additional.
there.
Yeah.
Because like sometimes it's 10 people, but then sometimes I have 50 people that are all getting food and drinks. So then they're ecstatic.
Yeah. Or when I do team building workshops, I'll be like, we can do it at Wet Willie's if you order the food for your people. Mm-hmm. And now they've got a buffet for 50 people, and it helps them, and it, again, it's win-win. I help them, they help me, we all stay in business, we all do well. But I think because I did, like, the people I think I got in business first, and now I know better, that's how you learn. Mm-hmm. We're like, yes, we need you here. It was like, oh, well, that's great. I didn't know you're going to open up at 2:00 and then party there and then get yourself closed down by losing your liquor license. That makes things weird. So exactly. We had that happen too.
Of course.
But, all of it was like learning, it's anything with your own business. Before it was just, I was on an improv team, other people ran the business. But I also learned that, and because people will come in new and be fired up and be new improvisers, like, you should be doing this and this and this. It's like, I could, but I'm okay. Like, do I really want to get that big? I've even seen how much Chicago's changed since I've left, Again, that was 14 years ago. Like, we were such a small community then. And you pretty much knew everybody, even if they were at a theater you weren't in. You'd go see their shows and whatever. You knew, almost everybody. And now it's so huge. Like I said, there used to be 3-4 levels. Now there's like 12 levels at each of the theaters, and that intimacy is gone. And everybody I talked to, like Susan Messing or Jonathan Pitts, people that a lot of the people that were there during the time that are still doing things in Chicago. It's like there was really a special time, wasn't it? Like, yeah, it was. It's like nobody will ever see anything like that again. Like, we outgrew ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so with us, I like that we're small. I like that we have 33 players. I like that we know each other. We have pool parties. We have Christmas parties. That what I had, I kind of have a little bit of that again. I won't have the same because I'm not just a performer. I'm the director. So then, people take things I say a little bit more seriously, or whatever, take me a little bit more seriously than they should. But I'm like, don't listen to me about anything but improv. Just trust me on this. Like, I got that. You don't have to take me seriously about anything else. So I do like us being the way we are. I don't want to see us blow up. I'd like us to make enough money that all my improvisers get paid. Mm-hmm. We're all doing really well and nobody has to have a day job. That would be great. Mm-hmm. So if that could happen without losing the intimacy and the community and the family feeling that we have, I'd be great for it. So I'm always kind of a little reticent about, ooh, I don't want to blow up. I don't want to lose who we are. I don't want to lose the authenticity that we got.
Yeah.
Because now we're the big dogs or something like that. So it was too hard to give that up. Just okay.
No, you go ahead.
I was just like, somebody's like, well, don't you ever want to be famous? I'm like, oh, God forbid, no. know, to finally come to a place where you know where you are without even not leaving myself an improviser or a director or mother or grandmother, to just be and to get to where this is just me. This is who I am today. I'm Keli. That's so hard to get there. That when you have people start telling you who you are and what you need to live up to and feeling like, oh, I got to do another thing and another thing to remain being this person people think I am. I never want to be in that trap, and I've seen people go through it.
Yeah.
And that's horrifying to me. I'd like the money and the prestige, to a certain degree, but I also, don't want people coming after my kids or, I can't have a private life. I like going to the grocery store in sweats and no makeup. I want to always do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, none of that would be cool.
Yeah, absolutely. But and also too, there's people that come through the theater that have gone out and they've gone to New York or LA and they've traveled and stuff like that through your theater. Whether it works out for them or whether they're like, well, at least I tried it. The point is they probably wouldn't have tried it if they wouldn't have come through your theater.
Yeah.
Because you gave them an outlet to see, well, am I good at this? Am I bad at this? Do I feel like I can do this?
Yeah, or at least to be inspired.
Yeah.
Like we were talking earlier, you go to Chicago and I'll say you're not going to have the experience I did. It's a cattle
You're going to think it sucks right away because you didn't get to do it.
But you're going to get something because if you go because you're inspired, it doesn't matter what the end result is. You might have another thing. Like Sabrina, she went there and she did all sorts of shows there and she taught at Second City and did all the big stuff there. And then she ended up in California, opening up her own little theater there in Fresno, and then moving a little farther than that, and now and teaching kids. And it doesn't mean that. There is no end. There's no winning at anything. There's no arriving. So it's
you never get to spike the ball. You
never
get that.
Every once in a while you go, yeah. We have the playoffs coming up. Every year at playoffs, I'm like, yeah. Because everybody's excited. Everybody's at the theater that weekend. Not just a few people here. Everybody's there. Our whole family's together. And the energy is so heightened and so frantic and so full of love. Everybody loves each other and people that don't see each other that often because they maybe one person hasn't played for 3 months and the other person, hasn't played for a year. The other person plays all the time, but only on Fridays, and the love that they have for each other when they see each other and hug and just and then they're like, we're going to kick your butt tonight. Are those moments that I almost cry. I'm like, I am so proud and so thankful that I had that tear your life apart moment to go do that, then to come here and watch these, my performers, my friends, have these friendships and have this love and this passion and see their lives change, to watch that and say, thank you for letting me be the vehicle for that. Because it's in shamanism, it's a hollow bone. I'm only the conduit for this to happen because I love this so much that I'm bringing the improv to you, do with it what you can. Whether you take one class and leave and go, man, it's not for me. Or you end up, in New York or wherever you end up is here you go. Do with it what you will. But to see that and see the sparks, that to me just gives me so much more love and praise of the art form in and of itself. It is the art form that does that. I'm just a conduit for that. So it's Keli didn't do this as far as I'm concerned. This art form did it. I fell in love with the art form. So therefore, if you're in love with something, passionate about it, you bring it forward. And then other people go, oh, this is cool too. And then they bring it forward and it continues to grow and thrive. It's like planting a seed and watching a garden grow. You're now like, I rock. Look at this garden. No, the intelligence was already in the seed and the sun and the things that they already do. The magic was already there. I just planted the seed and came out and tended it with water. And that's my job. I'm the gardener, And
that's why you did this, and that's why you started this.
Yeah. I'm not even knowing that's what I was doing. I really did it selfishly. I wanted people to play with. You don't always have to have altruistic reasons for things to end up being beautiful. But if you do go with your heart into what you're passionate, I think we're all born with something we're passionate about, which is what our true being is and what we should do. Again, it took me till I was 26, 27 to find it. Some people, they're 40, 50, 60. As long as you find that, that it does always grow. Everything grows with love. So if it's something that you love and it's authentic to you and you're passionate about it and it's what you think about it, it's what what makes your heart sing again is that will always provide enough food for others too. So it will always grow and will always help, because anytime that you're living in that place of good positive energy and feeling great about what you're doing or loving it or struggling for it, and you have this intention, it inspires other people, whether it be in improv or like, anything else, that it just moves out, around everything around you. And then you just watch all these little miracles happen. You're like, wow, I'm glad that I have an obsessive personality and that I fell in love with something that is helpful and wonderful. I could have fall in love with doing wood paneling, and it probably would have affected so many people in such a wonderful way.
Yeah.
So I like, part of me does, and I won't allow myself not to be proud. That was a big thing, is I wouldn't allow myself to be proud. So I allow myself to be very proud. But I also know there are other forces at work, that pushed me, shoved me every step of the way to do all the things that I've done to be here to where this is happening and everybody's coming together. Like in this playoffs, we have people coming in from New York, 2 people from California, people from Myrtle Beach. We got people flying in to be here for us to do this crazy little stupid thing that we do once a year.
Yeah, let's talk about it a little more, because this is going to come out right before playoffs happen.
Oh, cool.
Like the week before. So please talk about playoffs. Let's run down that a little bit.
Yeah, so the way the Charlotte Comedy Theater works is that we are all about the love. We play together. We yes and one another. We support one another on off stage. We're very close, and you can feel that when you see the shows. Like, we're having so much fun together. It almost, everybody enjoys watching it, even if, no matter what happens, because we're having so much fun and giggling and laughing and whatever, and everybody's part of that. Like, everybody's at the cool table. Mm-hmm. But one time a year, I will get everybody who's available that weekend, and I will pull them apart into 3 to 4 man teams, depending on people we have that are available. And I will pit them against each other. So we go from this loving, kind, generous community to, man, the gloves come off. Yeah. There's so much like smack talking. It is ridiculous. So I will also, like, they can't, like, oh, I want to be with so-and-so and so-and-so. I will put the teams together. So it'll be with people they haven't played with, or people that I think their energy will be good together. And this is a short form. And what they'll have to do is they have to come up with unique games. So they can take games that we do and make a variable of it. Like one that's been done before was, the alphabet game, where each person has to, in succession, start their sentence with a different letter of the alphabet. Well, they've done one where they've blindfolded themselves and put mouse traps on the floor and walk barefoot through the mouse traps while they're trying to play the game. We've had people have like dog shock collars, and had an audience member zap them if they said a certain word. Mm-hmm. Like, they get pretty ridiculous. Some have gotten a little dangerous. I
think you've listed off 2 of the dangerous
ones.
Yeah.
No. One was
Oh, there's more dangerous than that.
Yeah. There was one where, this is my favorite. And I said, if you think it might be dangerous or whatever, come to me first and clear it with me. Well, they didn't. And we have something called Bucket of Death, and we don't do it where we are now because we don't mess up the floors.
Already.
Yeah, but Bucket of Death is a game where you basically get a cooler full of water, and one person has their head upside down in the water. 2 other people are doing the scene. When they start running out of air, they put their hand up, and one of the other 2 will tag them out. They come up, get a breath. That person puts their head in the water, and the person who had their head in the water starts the scene with the other person acting as if they knew what was going on, which of course they don't, because they had their head underwater. Well, we've changed that. One time it was bucket of pudding, and it was chocolate pudding with whipped cream and everything else. So it gets a lot of fun and a lot of messy. But somebody was like, oh, here's a variation. We're going to put dry cleaning bags on our head, which, if you know, dry cleaning bags should say on them, this is not a toy, do not put this over your head. Well, I assume, because they're adults, that they put holes in the dry cleaning bags before they decided to play this game. So one person would have a dry cleaning bag on their head, and the other 2 are doing the scene. And they're like turning all blue and white and everything, and they're putting their hands up. So one of the guys, Eric, who's coming back to play this year from Myrtle Beach in this game, like, while they did that game, and I was looking at him, and finally I was like, oh my God, like, they're not doing well. And I'm rushing on and like pulling them off and grabbing the bags. And like, what is wrong with you? So the scene they do after that one, after I was like, we're stopping this right now. Something's not right, So the other team goes, and then these guys have caught their breath again. Well, the other guy did something with his head when his head was in the bag, where he blew out like his hearing. So his next scene, he was like yelling through the whole scene, which actually ended up being very funny. And I thought he was doing it as a character choice, but he literally couldn't hear because he had his head in a bag. Anyway, so it gets absurd. Improvisers are generally, people are competitive. Improvisers definitely are. So they do the craziest stuff. They have to have a team name. They'll come in, they'll make up their own uniforms. They'll have big openings. So on there's Friday, I think it's the 26th. So it's the last weekend in June this year. It's we have one show of 2 teams, and there'll be a winner there. Friday at 8 o'clock, there'll be 2 teams that compete, a winner there. And at 10 o'clock, the winner from Friday and the winner from 8 o'clock Saturday will then compete for the championship, and they get trophies and everything else. And it's usually based on audience approval. Each of them will say, this is what we're going to do. 2 of them will do a scene, and we go, okay, who did best? This year will be the first year that I'm not hosting it. I'm actually going to be a judge. So it can't be a popularity contest, or it can't be like, oh, we just put our head in pudding and, sawed Jonna's leg off.
Yeah.
Last year, Jack got his head shaved. If he said a certain word, he shaved his head bald. So it can't just be stunts. You can do all the stunts you want, but you have to have a good scene.
Yeah. Yeah, it has to be good.
Yeah. So now I'm like, okay, if you want to do that, that's fine. Throw pies at each other and all the crazy wacky stuff we've done. But I'm going to give you extra points or takeaway points if you don't have a good scene. Let's still do good improv, because the playoffs got to where they were so ridiculous and people were like, I'm afraid somebody's going to shoot somebody. Like, I shot my player. We get points, right? No, you don't. And good sportsmanship is part of it too. Like if you help the other team, even though you're trying to beat them, if they need help, you help them, you get points. And any bad sportsmanship, I'll rip points away. Taking it too seriously. That's not what we do in improv. So definitely. Yeah. So it is just the most amazing weekend of the year, but it's exhausting. By the time it's over, we have had so much adrenaline going for the entire weekend that we don't want to. Nobody wants to do anything. We don't want to improvise for a couple weeks, but we come back Friday and do it again. Obviously. But it's so much fun, and it sells out because our theater's only 50 seats. So that one sells out every year. So I always tell people, like, make reservations. So it's a blast.
Well, where can people make reservations and know more about what's going on about the Charlotte Comedy Theater?
Yes, it is www.charlottecomedy.theater.com. And we're not the fancy theater. It's THEATER. Just regular old theater. charlottecomedytheater.com. And everything's on there. Classes, workshops, shows, everything you want to know. And if not, we have an email address on there. It'll come to me and I'll answer your question.
There you go. All right. Well, is there anything that you want to let people know more about the Charlotte Comedy Theater, or anything in particular about that you do? Because you do a lot of stuff. I just saw your website literally 15 minutes before you walked in. I'm like, oh, I should have probably researched this a little more, because I was just waiting for you to come in. Like your was it Reiki or whatever?
Reiki, yeah.
Which
is ancient energy healing. Yeah. It's a hands-on modality of energy healing. And that is like a whole nother part of it.
That's a whole nother podcast in itself, it seems like.
But it's also part of it, because the more I've done spiritual stuff and shamanism and all that work, I realized how much energy mess I've been doing the last 20 years, because improv is the same thing. I mean, it's just a different vehicle for manifesting, being present, being in the moment, and all these things. And it's funny, because when I went on a more spiritual path and started doing all these things, I was like, man, I already knew this. I can't believe I didn't apply it to my personal life. I was good at it, on stage and whatever, and teaching it well, but I was like, I wasn't manifesting the same kind of experiences and being fearless and trusting my gut and trusting others and all these things that I teach in improv and that I experience in improv, wasn't experiencing in my life. So it really is just most of the same, just a different vehicle. Like, people who meditate, do yoga, run, there are a million ways to get to that place of a sense of self outside of description. And this is one of them. So really, doing Reiki and energy healing and all the other things I do energetically are just another vehicle outside of improv to find that space and to be a healthier, happier person. I mean, my main thing is, and I tell improvisers this, I tell people I do energy work with, same thing. It's like, there are 2 things you're going to do. You're going to live and you're going to die. You already did one of them. The other one is going to happen. In the middle there, all you really have to do, really, you don't have to get famous, you don't have to do any of this stuff. All you got to do is be joyful as you can. That's your job. If you think about that, regardless of what you do for work or for play, like if you just, like, your main focus is like, how can I be joyful right now? What is my joyful choice? Like, I still have to do my laundry, but I was like, I can find myself in gratitude of that. It's like, I have people I love that I'm folding these clothes for. I'm so grateful I have a family. I'm glad I have water, just to be joyful. So find that in everything that you can. And that to me is like my biggest thing, no matter what I'm doing, whether I'm improvising, doing the laundry, whatever, I'm driving through traffic. I'm like, how can I find this a joyful moment? How can I make this joyful for me? Because I've been miserable enough in my life. I choose joy. So that's pretty much, embodies all of it, is what I'm not always good at it. Trust me. I have my days where I'm just, running around like Del Close being a curmudgeon. But it's also to know that that's my focus now. Like we were saying, I don't do well outside of structure. You know, and then there's times you make your life too structured that there's just too many pieces to put it all together and get overwhelmed. And so I always go back to this when I get overwhelmed or tired or anything. It's like, what is joyful? What would make me joyful right now? Ice cream? All right, game on. I'm going to get some ice cream. You know, talking to a friend I haven't talked to, getting my bills done because it's bothering me. Any of those things like that will be joyful. So that's what I do. So all of it kind of, no matter what I do, all comes back to that. To the focus of that is now my framework. And I break the rules, and sometimes I'm not joyful. But that's my framework. That's my structure now. That's my army. That's my job. That's what's like, this is my job. This is the most important thing. So that makes it easier. But also it's very aloof. You know, it's like, oh, I don't know what that means right now. And then that will make me laugh, and I'll still be laughing. It's like, what the hell? I'm in line. How joyful is this? That person in front of me smells horrible, you know, or whatever it is. Like, I can make it. This can be good, you know.
Exactly.
So that's it. I don't really have anything else to say.
You nailed it right there. That's the one heck of a close. So
cool.
Thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you for having me. This is so much fun.
All right, thank you.
We can do it again and just talk about whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll interview you.
Oh, there you go.
Sweet.